All right, welcome to the Liberating Joy and Learning podcast. Again, I'm Robert Beckstrand, and last time we talked about the different types of learning relationships and how the right kind of relationship can maximize our learning efforts. This week, we're going to talk about how seeking joy in learning brings a multitude of benefits and a wealth of joyful experiences in learning.
Right. Learning is messy, and oftentimes the outcome we seek don't come. Sometimes our health doesn't improve, the plants die. Messiness and failures don't mean that we can't find joy in the learning process. The whole purpose of this podcast, as proclaimed in the title, is to liberate joy in learning.
Okay, so how do people generally find joy in learning?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is like you pass a test, right? You get a great score on a test, or you do really well on a paper that you write and the professor likes it. Right. So theoretically, you didn't know what you were doing and then you did. And then the professor was like, yay, you did a good job. And so you're happy because you got a good score.
Right. Okay.
And, or you gained a skill, right? Like you keep the plant alive.
Right.
Right. And the garden grows really well.
Right.
So that makes you happy because living things are cool.
Right, so there's a sense of accomplishment. That's where we get the joy from, is because we've been able to do something.
Right.
Okay.
Sense of accomplishment. What about you? Where have you found joy in learning?
I think it's like you said, it's that sense of accomplishment when you do something hard. You set your mind to wanting to do something, and whether or not you actually reach the goal, you see progress. Example we've used over and over in this podcast is disc golf.
Right.
It's a great analogy for this whole process.
Right. And since we're really bad at it and we're slow at learning.
Right.
Like we enjoy every little teeny
every time we
step.
go out, like when I can see my shot go exactly where I wanted it to go.
Occasionally.
Yeah. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens more and more that I feel good about the work that I'm going. I can't throw it as far as I want, but I'm getting better and I can see it. And so that's where I see that joy. I'm accomplishing something. Even though I'm not perfect at it, I see that progress.
Right. Same here. And I'm a few steps behind you. But
right.
Still improving, and we can feed off of each other. Well, no, you just tell me. But but we're both improving.
Right.
On some level there.
Okay.
So as a youth, I used a church program to make goals for self-improvement. I made a goal to read scriptures with an elderly couple who weren't interested in reading with me. I learned about serving people with that goal, and persistence led me to continue to make other goals. Another time, I made a goal to walk around the yard of my home and just observe the living things in it. That goal brings me joy even now, as I remember the awe I felt as I observed what was growing around my home. The joy I felt in learning with my mother wasn't necessarily connected to success in learning when we played our duets together.
Right.
Failing to play a duet well together could bring as much joy in laughing at ourselves as was the thrill of succeeding at playing it well. Now, there were a lot of times where they weren't pretty, right? It wasn't pretty.
Right.
I don't want anyone to feel like learning is always joyful for me. There were a lot of messy times. Mother-daughter relationships aren't perfect. But we can find joy in those situations that are not ideal, that aren't where you didn't succeed at your paper, or like I mentioned earlier, the plant died.
Right.
And I have had a lot of plants. I'm working on my third peace lily, and it's still alive, but it's really great because I have a friend and she told me what to do and she said, leave it alone. And I left it alone and it's doing really well.
I guess the trick in looking back on these attempts to learn and finding the joy is there was something that was accomplished. You learned something, whether it was I learned how to fail. I learned from my failure. I think that's where the sense of joy comes from. Once you're able to look back on things, okay, I didn't do that right, but this is where I can improve, and I take that to the next step, and I learn from that and progress to that point.
Right. Or I didn't accomplish what I set out to accomplish, but I found something else that I did accomplish. Right.
Right. Along
the way. I've the three peace lilies. The last one is doing really great, and I found joy in recognizing, okay, this is clearly not working, and just I don't know. It's sort of like sometimes you see a failure, and it's almost like a train wreck that you're enjoying watching.
Right.
Almost, right?
Almost, yes.
And so there is a sense of, okay, I really understand this better now because I can see how it's not reaching my expectations.
Okay.
So, any other examples where you have found joy in a learning situation in a way that you didn't expect to?
Well, you're talking about surprising ways that
Right.
we've learned. Okay.
Right.
I was, just for those that are listening, this is like our third attempt to do this podcast because the program kept on crashing on us yesterday, and I was right in the middle of this great story that I had thought about, and it crashed. So that's what Verena's hinting at, is to go back to that story, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
Okay,
about.
well, when I was a kid, I must have been 13 or 14, and I was in the Boy Scouts, and I don't know if they still do it today because we're not involved with scouting anymore, but you used to get the magazine called Boy's Life, and it was like every 3 or 4 months you get this magazine as part of your membership. And among all the articles and ads, they had this thing where you could raise money for your troop or earn things for yourself by selling Christmas cards. And so you set a goal, you figure out how many Christmas cards you need to sell to get certain prizes. And at the time, this was way before our modern day electronic games, the prize that I won was this electronic football game. Had metal pieces, and it was magnets, and then it vibrated. You plug in the play, and it would vibrate around the table, and the men would move around. And I thought that would be awesome to play with my friends. And so that was my first choice. But you also had to do your second choice, because in case your first choice wasn't available, they'd send you your second choice. So I think my mom recommended that I put down my second choice as this model rocket kit. And at the time, I really wasn't interested. I thought, okay, well, whatever. I'll put it down because Mom said so. When I did the sale, I sold all the cart. I got all the orders that I was obligated to get. Sent in my paperwork, and my first choice wasn't available, so they sent me this model rocket kit. And looking back on it, it was the best thing that I've ever done, because I've been flying model rockets now for 40 years.
You just reordered one today.
So I'm going to.
Okay,
I haven't had a chance to do that yet.
But so how many years? 30 years later?
Yeah, 30 or 40 years later, I'm still doing these rockets. I had a goal. I accomplished it. I didn't get what I wanted, but this model rocket thing has taught me a lot more about science and flight and engineering than that stupid little game could ever have hoped for. So that was a surprising learning experience for me, that sometimes the result we get is not what we expected, but it's what we want in the end.
Yeah. And if you're not reaching the expectations that you want to with learning, look around and see what other things you could be enjoying from that situation. So back to my peace lily, and it was just miserable to watch those die. But I have a relationship with the 3 other people that gave me guidance on how to take care of that plant.
Right.
And that's invaluable to me. Like that,
right.
Those relationships, and that's not the only thing that we connect on, but it's still important, right?
Right.
I was learning and seeking their opinion, their guidance on it. And, it built
right.
those relationships up. And I finally, persistence is its own reward too.
Right.
Right. Sticking with it.
Right.
And sometimes it's just external expectations. So I love spending time with my family, but it doesn't look like what other families look like when they're hanging out together.
Okay.
Right? Like we do different things. Just being together. Some people love to play games. Some people love to go out and go to concerts or whatever.
Right.
But look for those things that you're learning and you're growing that you can enjoy, that are unique to you, that are
right.
that are really valuable to
right.
you.
And I think we also have to understand, come to the realization that learning doesn't have to be programmed. Like I said, this peace lily thing, it's you're not studying a book, you're not spending time researching in all the normal, or what people consider normal study time to learn something. You're doing an experience, and you're asking people, and you're failing, but it wasn't something that you set out to learn how to do. It was how to grow a peace lily. Somebody gave you one, and you thought, oh, this may be fun to try to keep it alive. Third time's a charm, but it's not something you set out to do. It's just something that happened organically, and you grabbed onto it as a learning experience. I think that's something we have to realize, is sometimes these learning experiences are going to happen organically. They're just going to happen, and we have to understand that those happen. We need to grab those when they come.
Yeah, just watch for those opportunities. And this didn't happen. This has happened over a course of like 2 years.
Right.
Right. So it's not like I'm thinking about my peace lily every day. You
Right.
know? So learning doesn't have to be a constant thing to be joyful either.
Right.
So, any other thoughts?
No.
I think that it just the thing that I would hope that everyone would ponder is, how do you find joy in learning besides just reaching your own expectations from it? Look for those other things. So to sum things up, seeking joy in learning brings a multitude of benefits and a wealth of joyful experiences in learning. Once again, we've hoped you've considered what your own answers to these questions might be as we've discussed them. The learning principles we've been discussing so far come largely from the introduction of the Learning Liberated workbook. Next time, we'll conclude this series of principles and give a preview of what we'll be discussing in the next series of episodes. In these, we'll start going through the core principles identified in the book Learning Liberated. And remember, send your questions or comments to learningliberated@gmail.com.
Thanks a lot.